Welcome in, everyone, to a deep dive that takes us right inside America's prison system.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not talking about just any prisons today.
Right.
We're going deep into women's prisons.
Yeah, it's a world that, most people only see in, fictional TV shows or movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're going to go beyond the headlines and the stereotypes.
Yeah, with real stories.
Yeah, these are real women with real stories, and we're lucky enough to have some documentary footage from 2 Indiana women's prisons to guide us.
Okay, cool.
Rockville and Indiana Women's Prison.
All right, so these facilities hold, what, like 1,800 women?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Which is a crazy number when you think about it.
It is a lot.
And it really reflects just how many women are incarcerated in the U.S.
Yeah.
Compared to the rest of the world.
The U.S. has the highest female incarceration rate in the world.
Oh, wow.
So that's a big question. Like, what are the reasons for this?
Yeah, and I think the documentary kind of hints at some of the contributing factors. And I think one of the big ones is the war on drugs.
Yeah.
Which seems to have hit women pretty hard.
Yeah. Especially women who are dealing with addiction.
Right.
And we'll see this play out later on when we talk about some of the personal stories.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the documentary host, he kind of went in thinking it was going to be this more, subdued environment.
Yeah.
He had this stereotype in his head that women are the gentler sex.
Right, right.
And he was quickly met with something different.
Totally different picture. Yeah. I mean, his preconceived notions were totally shattered when he learned about this inmate.
Oh, yeah.
Who stabbed a man 40 times.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a lot of times.
Yeah,
And I think it's a reminder that women, just like men, are capable of committing serious crimes.
Right.
And it forces us to look beyond these labels.
Yeah.
And understand that human behavior is complex.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of complex cases.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you to Sarah Pender, a convicted double murderer.
Oh, right.
And someone who pulled off a really audacious escape.
Oh, yeah. Her 2008 escape from a maximum security facility. I mean, it's like something out of a movie.
Crazy.
And what's even more remarkable is she got help from a prison officer to get out, Scott Spittler.
Wow.
And this wasn't, a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was planned meticulously.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what would lead a seasoned officer to risk it all like that?
His career, his freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where Pender's manipulation skills come into play.
Okay.
The documentary highlights how cunning she was.
Uh-huh.
How meticulous her planning was.
Yeah.
I mean, she hid in a transport van.
Oh, wow.
She had this whole contraband scheme going on before to get money.
What?
For her life on the run.
Wow.
And she even admitted to a sexual relationship with the officer.
Hold on. So a contraband scheme.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean in prison?
So basically, it's getting and giving out things you're not supposed to have. Anything from, cigarettes or extra food to cell phones, maybe even drugs.
Okay.
And for Pender, it seems like she was using this to finance her escape.
That's pretty resourceful.
Yeah.
I mean, if not, morally ambiguous.
Right.
And I think Sergeant McPherson would agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
She's a veteran prison officer.
Yeah, over 20 years of experience at Indiana Women's Prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she's seen a lot.
She's seen it all.
And she describes Pender as one of the best manipulators she's ever seen.
Yeah, she really does.
Wow.
She's like, Pender could spot a weakness a mile away.
Oh, God.
And she'd use it.
Yeah.
She really preys on people's vulnerabilities.
Okay, so the question is Sarah Pender like a criminal mastermind?
Yeah.
Who orchestrated this whole thing?
Right.
Or was she a desperate woman?
Yeah.
Taking advantage of a situation?
Yeah.
Or is it both?
It's possible.
Yeah.
It could be a little bit of both.
We'll come back to her story later. But for now, let's shift gears and talk about the reality.
Okay.
For most women in these prisons.
Okay, yeah, because Pender's escape, that's not the norm.
Right.
And it's important to understand what daily life is like for most of the women there.
Yeah, and the documentary shows this really stark contrast between the structured life that most inmates live.
Very regimented.
Yeah.
And then the isolation of solitary confinement. That's a huge difference.
Yeah. So imagine a day that's completely controlled by a schedule. Very limited recreation time.
Yeah.
Short meal breaks. hardly any contact with the outside world.
It's a world away from Pender's escape.
Yeah.
You know?
And it just highlights the restrictions that most inmates face.
Yeah, exactly.
So the documentary really brings this to life through the story of Addie Hartz, who's a young mother serving time for robbery.
Her story is really powerful.
Yeah, I found her story really, I don't know. It was just really impactful.
Yeah.
She talks about her past struggles with anger and being exposed to crime at a young age.
Yeah, her own mother was in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
And the regret that she has.
Yeah.
For letting down her two daughters.
It's heartbreaking.
You can really feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Addie's story brings up some important questions about the cycle of crime.
Right.
Like, how do we break that?
Yeah.
And what happens to families
Yeah.
when a parent is incarcerated?
Especially the children.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It makes you think about rehabilitation in a whole new way.
Yeah, for sure.
And
it's clear that Addie is determined to break that cycle.
Oh, absolutely.
She wants a second chance.
Yeah.
And she's not alone in that.
Right.
A lot of the women in this documentary, they want to rebuild their lives, be better mothers to their kids.
Yeah, they want to redeem themselves.
Yeah, and that desire for redemption.
Yeah, it's like a common thread in all these stories.
It is. It really connects them.
Yeah.
And, speaking of redemption.
Okay.
There's another story that's really powerful.
Okay.
Martha Search.
Okay.
She's about to be released.
Oh, wow.
After 20 years.
20 years.
20 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Talk about a mix of emotions.
Yeah, she must be terrified.
Excited and terrified.
Yeah.
To go back to a world that's completely changed.
Right. Her daughters have grown up.
Yeah.
Technology is different.
Everything's different. And she's carrying the weight of...
Yeah.
What we call institutionalization.
Yeah, what is that?
It's basically when you get so used to prison life that you can't function outside.
Right.
Like making decisions.
Yeah.
Social situations, even technology.
Yeah.
It's all overwhelming after years inside.
Yeah. That's a lot to deal with.
It is.
And it just shows how long-lasting the impact of incarceration can be.
Yeah.
And the documentary doesn't sugarcoat it.
It shows the real obstacles that women face.
For sure.
When they get out.
Yeah. Reintegration is not easy.
Yeah.
And these stories really bring that home.
Yeah, they do.
The stories of women like Martha and Addie, they show us the truth of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And Martha's story about going back to the world after so long.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how incarceration affects everyone.
Right, not just the person in prison.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, families get torn apart.
Yeah.
Kids grow up without their parents.
It's tough.
Communities are impacted.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a whole web of consequences.
Absolutely. And the documentary does a good job of showing those connections.
Yeah, it does. And it also introduces us to this other woman.
Okay.
Who really shows how hard it is to reintegrate.
Okay.
Especially when you're dealing with addiction.
Yeah, you're talking about PA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The repeat offender who's struggling with meth.
Yeah, her case is like a textbook example of the hurdles women face.
Yeah, when
they don't have transportation.
Right.
No support system.
And the temptation to relapse is everywhere.
It's all around them.
Yeah.
It's so hard to rebuild your life.
It really is.
Yeah. And there's this one scene
where
PA calls her daughter
to
tell her she's going back to prison.
Heartbreaking.
Her daughter's only 9. And you can just hear the pain in her voice.
It's tough.
Like you can feel it.
Yeah, it really drives home the point that these choices, they have consequences that go way beyond the individual.
For sure, they affect innocent people too.
Yeah, and PA's case, it really makes you think about addiction and poverty and the lack of support systems.
It also kind of ties together.
It does, and it also highlights this idea of recidivism.
Oh, yeah, what's that again?
So recidivism basically means when someone who's been convicted of a crime commits another crime and ends up back in prison.
Right, so like a repeat offender.
Exactly.
And PA's story shows that if you don't deal with the root causes, like the addiction or the lack of opportunity, putting people in prison isn't going to solve anything.
Exactly. It's not a long-term solution.
Yeah.
You got to address the underlying issues.
For sure. But, we've talked a lot about the inmates.
Yeah.
What about the prison officers?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We heard Sergeant McPherson's perspective.
Right.
But the documentary also gives us a glimpse into how tough this job is.
Yeah, emotionally.
Yeah.
It takes a toll on you.
It's easy to forget that they're human too.
Yeah.
They're dealing with trauma and violence every day.
They see the worst of humanity.
And they're constantly exposed to it.
Yeah, and it wears on you.
Yeah, and there's this one story about Lieutenant Brad Gray.
Oh, yeah.
Who was on duty.
Yeah.
When Sarah Pender escaped.
Right.
And he talks about how sick he felt.
Yeah. Physically and mentally.
When he found out a fellow officer helped her.
Yeah, betray.
The broken trust.
Yeah, it's got to be devastating.
Yeah. It's a reminder that this system, it affects everyone.
It does.
Not just the inmates.
The officers, their families, the whole community.
Yeah, we can't think of prisons as like these isolated places.
Right, they're part of our society.
Exactly. And speaking of connections.
Okay.
Let's go back to the idea of trauma.
Yeah.
Which is something we see in a lot of these women's stories.
It's a common thread, for sure.
Like Addie Hart's.
Right. The young mother.
Yeah, she's trying to break the cycle, but her background is full of hardship.
And trauma.
Yeah, and that definitely played a role.
And her path.
In her choices.
Yeah.
And I think her story, along with others,
yeah.
points to a bigger conversation.
About the connection between trauma and crime.
Exactly.
And mental health.
Right.
You can't ignore those things.
No, and you know, a lot of incarcerated women,
they have
a history of abuse.
Physical, sexual, emotional.
The way they make decisions. Yeah, how they cope.
Their overall well-being.
Yeah, and it's clear that locking someone up without dealing with the trauma.
Right.
It's not a solution.
It's not enough.
We need to help them heal.
Yeah, give them the tools they need.
So they can build a better future.
For themselves and their families.
Exactly.
And you know, this documentary, it's focused on these specific women.
Right, in Indiana.
But it makes you think about the bigger picture. Like what's going on in society that leads women to prison.
Especially women from marginalized communities.
Exactly.
You know, poverty.
Lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
Bias.
All of it.
It all plays a role.
These are big questions.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are easy answers.
No, but the documentary is a good place to start.
It gets a conversation going.
Yeah, it opens our eyes to a world that we don't often see.
And it challenges our assumptions about crime and punishment.
Exactly. And, you know, within all this, there are stories of resilience and hope. Yeah. Like Martha.
Exactly.
She's getting out after 20 years.
Yeah, and she's ready to embrace it.
She hasn't given up.
She's proof that the human spirit can endure anything.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can't forget about Sarah Pender.
Right.
Who's in solitary now.
Yeah, because of her escape.
Yeah.
And, you know, earlier we were talking about her as a master manipulator.
Right.
But as the documentary goes on, we start to see a different side of her.
Really?
Yeah, she opens up about her relationship with Richard Hull.
Oh, right. The guy who actually committed the murders.
Exactly. And Pender's interviews, they kind of suggest that she might have been manipulated too.
What do you mean?
Well, she claims that she bought the gun.
Yeah.
Out of fear.
Really?
Yeah, she thought she could change Hull.
Wow.
She says she was naive, desperate, caught in a toxic relationship.
Right.
And she talks about how being labeled a manipulative murderer has really affected her.
I mean, that's a heavy label
to
carry around.
Yeah, and so it makes you wonder, was she manipulating the officer?
Right.
Or was she a victim of Hull's manipulation?
Oh, wow.
Was she both?
That's a good question.
These are the complexities that the documentary leaves us with.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think about the possibility of multiple truths.
Yeah.
And to remember that people are rarely just one thing.
Especially in the justice system.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Pender's story, I think it shows how much we like to simplify things.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to crime.
Right. We want a clear villain.
Yeah, a good guy and a bad guy.
Yeah, but real life is messy.
Oh, it's way more complicated than that.
And, you know, Pender's claims, whether true or not, they make us question those easy labels.
Yeah, like is she a mastermind or a victim?
Yeah.
Maybe both.
It's possible.
It also raises questions about the legal system.
Okay, how so?
Well, if Pender really believes she was in danger, like she had to do it.
Okay. Could that have changed things legally?
You're talking about like duress.
Exactly.
Right, where someone's forced to do something.
Yeah, because they're afraid of getting hurt.
It's a tricky legal concept.
It is.
And I think that could be a whole other deep dive.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it seems like this documentary, it's about more than just the women's stories.
All right.
It's also kind of critiquing the system itself.
Yeah, it's not giving us easy answers.
No, which I think is good.
Yeah, it makes you think.
It makes you question things.
And engage with these issues on a deeper level.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I really liked about this deep dive.
Yeah.
It reminds us that these aren't just stories.
They're real lives.
Yeah. And this system,
Yeah.
It's always trying to find that balance.
Between punishment and rehabilitation.
Right.
Accountability and compassion.
It's a tough job.
It is. And, it's easy to get caught up in the headlines,
the
sensationalism of it all.
Right.
But these individual stories, they show the human side of it.
The choice is the consequences.
Yeah, and the possibility of change.
Yeah, even in the darkest places.
Exactly, and we saw that with Addie.
Right, she's determined to break the cycle.
Then Martha.
Yeah, she's ready for a new life.
And even Sarah Pender, with all her baggage.
The master manipulator label?
Yeah, there's still a part of her that wants to be understood.
Right.
To tell her side of the story.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway here.
What's that?
Everyone deserves to be heard.
Yeah.
No matter their past.
Everyone has a story.
Everyone has the potential to grow.
And that spark of humanity.
Yeah, it never goes out.
It's a good reminder that the justice system,
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
It's flawed.
But it's dealing with really tough questions.
Yeah, like what is justice?
What does it mean to rehabilitate someone?
How do we create a fair society?
These are questions we need to keep asking.
Absolutely. And I think this deep dive has given me more questions than answers.
Yeah, me too.
But that's a good thing.
It is. It means we're thinking critically. We're challenging our own assumptions.
Yeah, and I think we need to approach these issues with humility.
And empathy.
And a willingness to learn.
Exactly. Because the question is, what can we do to make things better?
As individuals.
And as a society.
Yeah, how do we address the root causes of incarceration?
Support rehabilitation.
Create a world where second chances are possible.
That's the goal.
Yeah. I'm leaving this deep dive feeling a lot more curious about the justice system.
Me too.
And the people caught up in it.
And I'm ready to have more conversations like this.
Me too.
Real conversations.
Yeah, that challenge us to think differently.
And, as always, we've got to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
We've only seen snippets of these women's lives.
Right. Just a glimpse.
So what happens when the cameras stop rolling?
Yeah. What are their lives really like?
What challenges do they face?
What victories do they achieve?
When they're on their own.
Inside and outside those prison walls.
That's something to ponder.
It is food for thought.
Yeah.
And until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and always keep it in the box.